Good evening, everybody. Good evening. How are you guys doing today? What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Stoked podcast, Creative Talk with Creative People. I am Javon Stokes, creator, host, producer, writer, artist of many, many things, including my baby Heat uh, and Strong. Um, and if you are interested in Heat and Strong, please feel free to go to visuallystoked.com and check out a copy of Heat and Strong. All right. We have a great guest today. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Um, Longtime friend of mine. She just popped in. So I am going to bring her in. But before I bring her in, I just want to make sure I let everybody know that this Saturday, I didn't bring it in. This Saturday, I'll be in Norwich for CT Collecticon. I'm there. I'm gonna have Heat number one, Strong, all my good stuff. I'll put the graphic up a little later, but yes, I will be there this Saturday from 10, I think 9 for VIPs to 3. So feel free to come out, Norwich, Connecticut. I think it's Norwich Holiday Inn. So feel free to check me out. I'll have more information at the end of the show. But let's get our guest in. We don't want to hold it too long. Let me get the my nice. There we go. All right. Our special guest tonight is another longtime friend of mine. She's currently the director of People and Culture for Impact. She's multi-talented and wants to promote everyone's courageous voices. Let's give a Stoked podcast a round of applause for Shandia Drummond-Butt.
Me.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I'm trying to see if okay. I don't know what's going on with the camera, but we'll just leave it at that.
We're gonna be there. All right, we'll leave you like that.
Well, I don't know how to. I'm struggling. It's giving me this crisp app thing. It's fine. No, it's fine. It's okay.
That's okay.
You can hear me clear?
Yes,
we're
we can
good
hear
with
you.
that.
How are you?
I am well. Thank you so very much for having me.
Of course. And Jamari, welcome. Finally made it from pushing keys in the streets.
Nice to meet you, Jamari.
Nice to meet you.
All right. Now, Shandia was a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, actually, I think. I had said that I'm looking for people to be on the show, creative people to have creative conversations with. And she was like the first person hand raised to be on. And I was like, really? So I'm like, oh man, I got to see what Shandia wants to talk about. Because, I know Shandia from a different type of creative work. But that's not what you wanted to bring to the attention today. So I do want to talk about that. But I do want to talk about what you want to talk about. And I'm assuming it's from your position. Did I say it right? You are the director of People and Culture for Impact?
That is correct. I am the director of People and Culture at Impact Branding and Design. We are a sales training and marketing training consulting firm. We are out of New Haven. Our home office is in New Haven, Connecticut, but we are worldwide, which is awesome. We have a very diverse team base. Some are across the pond, some are here in the US, but we're a pretty remote culture. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Okay. All right. And what exactly does your position entail?
Yeah. So my position I'm positioned at the company as the director of people and culture. And so what that means is really driving people experience initiatives, engagement initiatives within the corporation, driving the culture through trainings, through awareness, continuous advocation, right? I think that's the biggest piece to my role is continuously advocating for the voices that haven't necessarily found their footing, haven't found that gravity just as yet, and helping to coach them into pretty much tapping into their courageous voice and being more candid within the workplace.
Okay. Is this mostly for like minorities, or is this for everybody?
This is for everyone. So I also had the strategy for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at Impact. So this is a very inclusive strategy. Um, but we do know that there's disparities, right? There's disparities in gender, there's disparities in race, there's disparities in age, there's disparities in ableism. So from my vantage point within the company, I'm able to kind of get the pulse on all of those areas, shed light on those areas, bring a lot more awareness. So the leaders in turn can show up for the greater workforce with a lot more compassion, a lot more empathy, and building a lot more trust.
Go ahead, Jamari. I have another question, but go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead with your question right now. I'm listening. I'm absorbing. This is very different today.
Yeah. I was very interested when I was talking to my wife about it, and she was like, yeah, she was interested in what you had to say and your position. So this involves a lot of like training internally, or is this like external training other companies, or both?
So right now, this is just internal. This is
Okay.
internal. My work, my work, you can say, is both internal and external. The way that I position myself specifically on social, like LinkedIn, is a thought leader in this space of like promoting courageous voices within your organization, helping to weed out those inconspicuous leaders that are sitting in the background but just need that extra support, that extra nudge. And what we do that is through story. I would say the biggest advocate for that is through storytelling, understanding the perspective of others' experiences. And so I'll start with kind of like my story and how I even landed into the work that I do now and how it fuels that. Awesome. So I would say back in 2016, I was working at my third, corporate job, long-term, right? Long hours. If most of us who've worked corporate know that the culture is very toxic.
It can be, yep.
Yeah. And if you think about it, Connecticut was sitting in the space of like insurance. We were the insurance capital, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Hartford being that epicenter. And I was working at a wealth management firm. And granted, and I will always say this, and I'll vanguard it with this point of there needs to be a retraining for leadership, specifically for leaders that have been trained in the older model, which is like the Mad Men era of the 80s of like, women are in the operations and admin roles and men are at the top in the suites and minorities really didn't have a place, right? So a lot of CEOs can sometimes have this mindset, these blinders on. And what I started realizing is I was working in that type of culture. I was working in that Mad Men culture of like, no matter what my role was, I was still relegated to the person that grabbed coffee for everybody. Was made sure that I had, sandwiches ready for a meeting. And like, I thought I was pretty influential in my current role and that I knew that I needed more than that. And on top of that, just thinking about the culture and how it squeezes productivity out of people almost until they're like a used up rag. And that's how I felt by the time I was ready to disengage. But then here's a caveat. I was 7 months pregnant.
Sorry, I was muted. That'll do it. That'll change every direction you have right there.
Right. So in my mind, I thought to myself, okay, I have one of two choices. I can continue down this route. And 6 months from now, I'm still going to be in this depressive state because the culture is not supporting me as a mother. It's not supporting me as a growing member of the company. Right. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to cut my loss. I'm going to put myself out there. And I did. And I immediately ran to LinkedIn. This was my first time like utilizing LinkedIn as a tool. And I put my resume out there and I started applying to some jobs. And I got some great feedback. I had people calling me in for interviews. And of course, the elephant in the room, I'm 7 months pregnant. Javon, you know me, I'm quite small, just like Tanika, and we also carry very small. So I was able to hide it with a certain style, right? Like an oversized button up and another oversized sweater, loose fitted slacks. And I was going into interviews and I was just like, going through these interviews and, the regular interview model was happening. And I remember like some of the companies that I was like, oh, I might have a chance. I was like, okay, I'm going to be honest. And like at the end of the interview, I was like, oh, so, I just want to be very honest with you. I am pregnant. I'm 7 months pregnant at that. So, and I did not get the best reception. And so I was like, oh crap, I'm going to just have to thug it out at this company until I have this baby. And then, on maternity leave, I'll figure it out. Right. And this is the mentality. Like, listen how crazy this mentality is to even adopt at this point in time. I'm a mother about to go on maternity leave. I know I have no support if I stay at this organization. And my only other option is like, hey, I'm going to thug it out until the end, cash in my last paycheck. And then when the baby gets here, I'm going to go on the job hunt again. And that was the plan. I was like, I can't stop. I got to keep moving forward because I already started this. I was, at the time, the manager that I was going to be introduced to at the architecture firm that I ended up transitioning to, he reached out to me on LinkedIn and say, hey, like, we really love your resume. We'd love for you to come in. And I remember going to bed the night before and I'm just like, Lord, I'm just going to go in. I'm not even going to hide.
Right.
Like, I'm going to be so out and open. And if this role is for me, if this is where you need me to be, you will open that door so wide. Like it's not even going to be, I can't even say like, oh, I just skated on by. It would have to be so blatant that you open this door for me.
Yeah. I
so
got
the
it.
next day, right? The next day I go in and I literally wore a very tight fitted button up. You can see the prominence of the belly. I was telling somebody before, I was like, I think like I put like a elastic band around the buttons on my pants to hold it together because I'm like, they're going to see this belly.
You're going to put it out there.
Right. And so like I go into the building and I walk into an office and it is 5 white men sitting at a table. The CEO, 3 of the principals. Oh, I'm lying, 4 principals. And so 6, and Chris Dupre, who's the I would say the star of this story, or the supporting actor, I should say. So I go into and everybody just like immediately, like you see the room kind of go still.
Right.
And I walk in there and I was just like, well, let's address the elephant in the room. Let's talk about it. Yes, I'm 7 months pregnant.
I was going to say that's one way to put it.
Right. Like, let's talk about it. And we had the most amazing conversation. And I just led with, here's the value that I'm going to bring the organization. And by the time I leave, this is how I'm going to set you up for success. And by the time I come back, this is how I'm going to help you propel to the next level. And I mean, great questioning, back and forth. And the good thing was the way that they fostered the way that it turned the conversation, it turned it from an interview to how can we best support you if you come onto this company. And I think I was waddling to my vehicle. This is downtown. So, it took me a couple blocks to get there. And I get a email message and I got the notification on my phone like, hey, I know this is really quick. So, take your time in answering, but we'd like to offer you the position.
Okay.
And that, I think that immediately opened up the floodgates to leaning into your strengths, leaning into your bravado, leaning into the most courageous part of who you are and be so authentic with it.
Right.
That nobody can refute it. Right? It's a beacon more than a deterrent. And that has literally stuck with me into the trajectory of my growth in my career. I am not a college graduate. I went to school. I was in school and when my firstborn was born, Aiden, and unfortunately he had to be hospitalized for over a year and I had to drop out and, all the rigmarole of being a single parent at the time. And I was just like, I'm just going to focus on just skill building. I'm going to just collect things one at a time. And that was my philosophy. I'm just going to build skills over time. And with that, that has really helped to propel me in my career, because moving from, the architecture firm, I then was brought on to Impact Branding and Design as this marketing and sales training firm. And I mean, my growth here has been exponential. I started out on the sales team. I was the BDR, worked on that for a little bit, then immediately moved into like a sales enablement coordinator, worked on that for a little bit. And then I was the accounting manager. I've never done finance, never done
That's
accounting.
amazing.
But my leader said, Shandy, we think that you can handle this. Like, learn what this is, put a process in place, and help us build this. And I think that's what, if I was to say, like, what really helped with that is just having the courage to try something. That's another thing. It's not only just having a courageous voice, but it's having the courage to try something and believing in yourself that you can see the other side of success. A lot of these roles that I've embodied in, like, I've gone through in life, like, I've tried them for the first time. I'm now doing DEI for the first time. I'm the director of people and culture doing HR for the first time. And I think that more people need that opportunity to just try.
Right. So the position you had, did it exist before you, or
No, it didn't.
So you basically, your growth within the company, and then they kind of found something to fit what you were looking to do. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. So like I came on, of course, to a foundational position. There was already a role there already built. From there, that immediately evolved into a role that wasn't there, which was the sales enablement coordinator. That hadn't been there. So that was building that out from scratch.
Wow.
Once moving out of that now, and then adding some certain skills, taking certain certifications, going to workshops, boot camps, just in that constant hunger for learning. I think leaders saw that and was just like, what if we try this? And what if she's a success? I don't know. I don't know the thought process behind it, but it was just like, it was random for them to be like, hey, you want to try and see if this fits for you? And that was awesome. And it's a great space to be able to flourish in, because it gives you the space to fail and learn from that failure and build something even better. And I think that has been just what has positioned me in such a great way, because I have failed. It's not that I haven't failed. And that's the beauty with courage, is to be able to speak up and say, I have failed several times, but to get on the other side of what that is like, that's true success.
Yeah. I mean, this is an amazing story. Jamari, go ahead.
You were talking about failure. When you are dealing with, what would you tell someone who's younger, say somebody who's either college, high school age, and they have not experienced that kind of level of failure? How would you prepare them to deal with that kind of situation?
Ooh. Coming from a mother with high school students. Oh
my God, they're in high school?
They're in high school now.
Jesus.
I know. Big guys.
Okay.
I think the advice that I would give the younger generation, which hear me out, we give them less credit than what they really deserve. Gen Zers are the greatest example. I am learning more from them than the other way around. But I would say, if I was to give any advice on dealing with failure, is give yourself grace through every part of the journey. There's always tomorrow. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in the one piece of that failure. Oh, and we can internalize it. And I'm no good at this. I need to look for something else. And then guess what happens? It starts to affect performance. It starts to affect your ability to be creative and innovative, because you're blocking yourself by internalizing that failure. Again, it takes a certain environment to foster that fail forward mentality of, if at first you don't succeed, pick yourself up and try one more time. There needs to be an environment that fosters that. So of course, it first starts with in the home, right? Your kids' grades are slipping, or they're not picking up after the house like they should be. And this is real example I'm giving you here. A lot of times as parents, we feel like we got to swoop in and we got to lecture and, oh, you got to be doing this, you got to be doing that. And, oh, you're just failing at life. And like, why can't you get it right? And I'm guilty of that. Very guilty of that. I've learned over time, let my kids fail. They have to sit in it for a little bit so they can understand what the other side of success is. As long as I have given them the guardrails, I'm continuously fostering support, and I've given them all the right tools and resources to succeed, then I have to allow them to utilize those things, no matter how they utilize it. And here's the thing, my interpretation is going to be completely different than theirs. And that's where failure comes in. But that is also where you cannot let failure to like eat you up, because your interpretation might be, oh my gosh, I just messed up so big. But somebody else is saying, oh, that's just a little thing. You can learn from that. So I would say the biggest advice is give yourself grace, because there's always tomorrow.
Okay. So, okay, I want to go back because I'm really interested in what your position actually entails. Like, are you doing like training? You personally, are you doing trainings, or are you overseeing people doing trainings?
Both.
Okay.
So in my position, my trainings are more geared around just like experience and awareness. So right now we launch awareness sessions within the agency that really just shed light on different events happening. So celebration, we did Black History Month. We hosted a session on just how we as Black people show up every day, some of the issues that we face. And it was just a space where there was diverse voices as well as diverse listeners. I think we always hit the mark with, we want diversity, but we need to get more diverse listeners in the room, because that's when you have when you have really great conversations. And that's when you have that aha moment of, I'm not the only person in the world. There's other perspectives outside of mine. We also just had one for Women's History Month. I think we had some riveting conversation. We talked about overcoming stories. We talked about the disparities of what women face in the workplace versus men. And that was just a great conversation to bring that awareness, shed light. So the trainings that I really facilitate is more just to help people realize, get to that level of awareness, so then they can then initiate, right? Go out there and be great and be successful. Once you have more perspectives within the world, it just makes it so much better.
Right. So and I'm trying to summarize, but it sounds like, it's a lot of opening channels of communication. Right. Between not just, the sexes, the genders, whatever terminology we want to use nowadays, trying not to get canceled.
Intercultural spaces. Right?
There we go. And intercultural. So that's
intercommunity
amazing.
spaces as well.
That's
really focusing on bridging that gap, because at the core of everything, we're humans. It makes a better team. It makes a better company. But not only that, we serve our users better. We serve our clients better when we are in a state of awareness where we can show up in an authentic way and really show up for that person.
Okay. You mentioned certifications. What kind of certifications go into doing something like this?
So right now I am working on my SHRM, SCHRM certifications. It's and like a human resources certification. But I just really want to definitely level up in my skill in human resources and people resources, making sure that I'm aware of all the best practices, all the right policies, and also how to facilitate and implement best practices and policies within the organization a lot more fluid.
Now, do you find that, being that you are, you correct me if I'm wrong, you did say this is a part of HR. Do you find
Correct.
that there is kind of like at times where company policy might clash a bit with, say, the vision that you want to implement?
I wouldn't say company policy. I think it's more of, again, I'm going to go back to awareness. The awareness of maybe something is not really, it's not loud enough for it to be important enough. I think that is where I come in and really help to amplify that sound within the corporation of like, hey, the greater voice within the company is saying this. We need to take action. Whereas before, not to say that it wasn't present, I think there's just more of a concerted effort now of like, especially what we've seen with like the quiet quitting and, you know, the great resignation.
Quiet quitting? Did I
Oh,
miss
yes.
something?
You've
Oh,
never heard that
wow.
term?
I've never heard
All
that
these
term.
fun buzzwords,
Okay.
Javon.
Oh my gosh. I'm so I was in corporate America for a little bit, and I've been
Yeah.
kind of out of corporate America. Like my job that I have now is not very corporate at all. So
Yeah.
all these, I don't even, what is quiet quitting?
Right. So hear me out. So a lot of my company is not corporate either. We're an agency, right? And I would say that because we have grown and scaled, we have definitely grown into a corporation, but we don't have a corporate culture. It's still very agency mindset. So very agile, very flexible, fluid. So what was happening the other day when, and you have to think about the market, employers versus employees, the employees were kind of taking over the market. And there was a huge demand from the employers. They were hiring like crazy. So this happened last year in 2022. And with that, a lot more people started realizing, well, I have options. I don't have to stay in a toxic culture. I don't have to stay in a culture that doesn't value its people. And so we had this phenomenon or this new buzzword that came out that was the Great Resignation.
The Great
Where
Resignation.
Right, where people were just standing their ground and saying, we're not taking this from companies anymore. If you don't treat us right, we're walking. And they did exactly that. And other companies who were promising, like, we're different. What, come to us. We're going to court you differently. Brought these people on with expectation and unfortunately didn't fulfill the promises. So then another phenomenon started to happen right after the Great Resignation, which was
So
also in tandem, right? You see all the fun things that I get to learn in HR.
I'm just like I've never heard of the Great Resignation or quiet quitting, so I'm just listening.
Reading about I remember reading articles about them. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Listen, I have to stay up on what's new. What's the new buzzwords out there in the ecosphere? So then we had the layoffs right after the big Great Resignation. Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, and again, it all back to like you're not considering your workforce. You're not treating people right. So what was happening is even in the midst of the layoffs, there was another phenomenon called quiet quitting, where people weren't just like getting up and leaving. They were giving feedback, but they kept sitting in this like limbo space of I'm just going to hold my head down until better comes around. So they were actively looking for work and then quietly quitting. So right, not telling their managers, not telling their bosses, none of that. Just like, hey, my 2 weeks. Like people weren't even aware.
Oh, okay. So we just put a name to it. Oh, we just put a name to it.
It's just a buzzword.
Man,
right.
I did that, man. I quiet quit before a bunch of times. Oh,
a lot of people
I've done that
have.
a bunch of times.
Right, but I think what it was because it was something that was trending. Of course, you have to put a word to it. So now companies can start talking about it a lot more and use a hashtag for visibility.
It's so just so weird.
That was the buzzword, right?
It's weird. This is something I know people who've been doing this who've been doing
years.
it for years.
It's not a phenomenon.
Yeah,
right.
so
it's not a new phenomenon.
To me, that's Gen Z right there. Like everything has to have like some sort of phrasing to it. It's just, any other time it's just like, yeah, I was looking for a job, found a job, and then I gave my 2 weeks or something like that. Like
we from the old school. That's how we
right. Like, oh, now I have to call it quiet quitting. Oh, that's what okay.
Well,
wow, that's crazy.
Here's the thing: is like when we're looking for certain behaviors, right? When you're analyzing certain behaviors that might trend towards something, you say like, oh, this person is a flight risk. I think that's another word that we used to use back in the day, like, oh, this person's a potential flight risk. They may leave the company. But now, just like you said, Gen Zers are coining all these terms And we're just following their lead. That's why I tell you all the time. It's just funny to me that I learned so much more from Gen Zers than I have ever before, of just like what this world is shifting into. Because they're the ones that, again, when we talk about courageous voices, they're the loudest in the room. They are no bars held. They are the ones on TikTok calling out their bosses. They're the ones that are all over LinkedIn, like saying pretty much like take down societal norms, dismantle them immediately because we won't stand for it. And us millennials, unfortunately, that have been sitting here fostering this environment and just kind of taking it, now we're kind of getting that bravity of like, oh, okay, well, look at all these little revolutionaries. Let me get on this little bandwagon.
I'm with you. Like I hear this stuff and I see, I see exactly what you say. I'm not on TikTok a lot, but my friend is Danny. He's like Mr. TikTok. He's all over TikTok. So he's always sending us stuff. And Jamari and I talk about this all the time. And I always find it funny that the discussion about breaking down societal norms. That's, to me, it's a valid discussion to have, and it's a valid thing to have. But it's like you want to break down the societal norm, but you want to keep it at the same time. I see a lot of the Gen Zers kind of want to do both, and I'm trying to figure out.
I don't think it's the Gen Zers. I don't think it's the Gen Zers. I think it's the millennials that are holding on.
You think so?
To that old mentality, that madman type of structural norm within corporations. I do.
Well, corporations, I can see how like corporations, how I've had some discussions with my stepdaughters about how they feel about the workforce and how they feel about things, and they tell me, to in their eyes, they believe that it's harder now to get a job and to be in the workforce than it ever was for me and for our generation. And so I am still sitting here like, you guys have no idea. Like it's the same. But then you hear other people say it outside, and it's always hard for me because, like you said, we're from a different era, and I'm notorious for staying in my era sometimes. So it's hard for me to kind of reconcile this thought process that somebody who is a generation after me feels that it's harder, when for me, I look at it from a pragmatic point of view, and how every generation has had it easier than a generation prior. So I'm always looking at it like that. But from their perspective, they're like, this is hard. Yeah. And I understand that it was hard for you, but this is hard for me. So that's always been hard for me to reconcile.
And so I think there's two parts to that, right? And so we talk about like each generation, it gets a little bit easier. And thinking back to that comment, it's just like, it's because the generation before has set the framework for it to be a lot easier. The thing is that what happens is the framework gets dismantled when the next generation doesn't understand why the framework was built in the first place and how it's going to help support them. So what happens is we keep going back and saying like, oh, and I will tell you one thing about Gen Zers, they are entitled. Oh my gosh. I love them to pieces, but they're so entitled.
You're talking to a parent. You're talking to a parent and a teacher.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
Jamari, it's front and center.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And so I'm always, telling my kids, especially, of just like, there are certain skills that has to stay with you throughout. That's generation after generation. That's foundational skills. And that is what's going to propel you. Like, we're paving the way for y'all, for it to be easy. We don't want y'all to go through the same abuse we did. Of course not.
No.
Or the same struggles we did growing up. You guys have it easier. And you're in the digital era where answers come to y'all quicker. You don't got to go looking for it. It's right there. Everything is at your fingertips. The thing now is to set is to lay down the foundation. We talked about that. We've been doing that. I feel as millennials, we've been doing that for the past, coming out of the civil rights era and getting into 90s and early 2000s, we have made leaps and bounds, even as just Black people,
Oh yeah.
you know,
I've
in the
always.
certain
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
foundations.
ahead.
Yeah. No. Go ahead, Javon.
No. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No. I was saying just in the, we've set certain foundations. They're solid. The thing is, the tools that are needed to help to continue to build on those foundations are missing.
Right. I mean, I've always looked at Gen Z as kind of a large scale example of, the phrasing, I want to give my kids everything that I never had.
Oh God.
I've always looked at Gen Z as like a large scale, almost like a culmination of that. Because
Right.
like you said, every generation before has kind of laid something down to make life easier for the generation after. Well,
Yeah.
now we're reached a generation that everything is at their fingertips.
Mhm.
Information is at their fingertips. Everything comes quickly. Everything is now quickly, they can,
ASAP
communicate with
culture.
people. Right. They can communicate with people faster than we ever could have at their age.
Yeah.
I was who were we talking with, Jamari, on the show? I was talking about how I used to send letters. I used to mail letters to people.
Me too.
Just how about
Right.
making plans with people and having to honor those plans ahead of time? So
Right.
if
You
say,
can't just
I'm
dip
gonna
out.
meet you in the mall at 6:00,
Yeah.
you're gonna meet at 6:00.
Right.
And at most, you might make a phone call before you leave, like, "Hey, I'm getting ready to leave," and that's it.
Right.
And now it's you can text you can be up to the minute, up to the
Yeah.
second. You can FaceTime with the person as you're walking up to them, and
Yeah.
so all that. If I had YouTube or TikTok back when I was struggling with math in high school, I would have
You
never
hear
failed a math
me?
class.
You hear me?
Yeah, there's just so much information that it's
Not
almost
just
overload.
information. Yeah.
It's almost like overload. Like everybody can be reached at any time. Like there's really no excuse to not be able to reach somebody. Like,
Right. Not be
I
able to
mean,
connect.
right. The connections but at the same time, the instant connection's there, but there's still the distance because, if you've got high schoolers, so you've seen them together. They're just kind of they're in the presence of each other, but they're all like on their
On their
phone.
phones.
They may
Yep.
not be engaged. Yeah, it's a
Right.
big difference when they're all
So the
engaged.
communication, like the communication skills are
Missing.
but at the same time, the knowledge is greater, but then you have these things. So it's just there's this again. We've created. I feel like I'm speaking from opinion, but I feel like we've created a world in which we did give our kids everything we didn't have.
Yeah, we did.
But that's where the entitled, ness of it comes from, because it's like, well, if you want something, you can get it right now. So if you can't get it,
I think
why? It almost like short circuits their brains. Like, what? I can't, I can't watch this show right now. Like, I gotta wait for it,
Yeah.
Or so it's how much does that affect how you work? Because I'm sure you're working with some Gen Zs, on some level, on your job, and then I'm sure you're working with how to teach millennials to connect.
Right.
And so how does that work? How do you maneuver that?
So again, like for me, I think the mindset that I always adopt is I don't know what I don't know. Right. I will go into every conversation with a more curious mindset because like, I don't know what I don't know, and that's why I said, for me, I love interacting with a lot of they fit into that quadrant of like, they fit into that generational community of Gen Zers within our company because they have a fresh perspective. They're always challenging the status quo. They ask great questions that kind of put you on your toes. Like, dang, nobody nobody's ever asked that before. They're very direct when it comes on to, this is my expectation for myself and where I want to go in life. I mean, me at that age, I was just like, listen, I'm just hoping this company will hold me for at least 2 years so it could look good on my resume.
Right.
Versus it being like, okay, I am intentionally choosing a company to go to work for based on these criterias. And if they don't have these criterias, then I'm not the right fit. And I didn't come to that understanding until I just told you. I was 30 something years old, and I came to that realization, well, of like, you know what? If they don't want me, they don't want me. This younger generation is saying that from the onset. Of like, I'm not gonna go waste my time with y'all if y'all gonna play me.
But it's always interesting. Again, I've had these discussions with my stepdaughters, and they're like, they'll want to hold out for a certain job.
Yeah.
And I would say to them, like, but again, I'm talking from my perspective
and your
not
experience.
in my experience. And it's always been like, you have to do the crap jobs.
Yeah.
Right. Like the crap jobs tell the larger jobs that, okay, this person knows how to work 8 hours. This person knows how to do this. This person knows how to do that. And I think there's a certain segment of that generation that's like, why do I have to work the crap jobs?
They don't want to start from the bottom.
Right. So, and like, more power to you. If you could find your way around it, great. And some of them have. But, it's always interesting to see, because I'm in the perspective of where my mother was. But I think I don't know if there was, I'm trying to remember how I was when I was 18, 19. I don't remember there being this much pushback to, all right, well, I got to go work in the mall for a little bit. Like it was just kind of like, this is the type of job I do at this age.
Yeah.
Like,
I will say, I think because we live in a digital age, we have accelerated the expiration date on things. And that includes not only things, but concepts too. So I'd imagine, Shandria, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
You can call me Shandy. That's fine.
All right. One of my questions I have for you is, what is what is one of the what are the most important norms do you hear that should be broken,
dismantled
in the corporate world, or what do you think they feel like needs to be dismantled the most?
Silos. Being like literally told like, hey, you only operate in this space. Like you can't operate outside of that. You can't have an opinion outside of that. And I'll tell you, that's more generalistic. We don't have that within the corporation actually, but that's more general, like nobody wants to be siloed. Another thing I think overall that we're dismantling is just the, what is it? The idea of work as usual, right? Where we think like everybody's coming on to just show up for that 40 hours, just focus on work, just ready to put in the 40 hours for the company and then dip. Like that's not the environment that we want to foster.
Really?
That's not, no.
Well, it depends on the
people
job,
to be able to cut, right? And here's the thing. Of course, we want you to show up and utilize your 40 hours for the best possible use. What does that entail? Some of it is going to be work. Majority of it's going to be work focused. But then there's team building. There's team collaboration. There's time that you need to develop yourself, develop skills that you really want to work towards. There's times, like I said, to go to a training or awareness session. We cannot just think work is comprised of, and especially in a remote culture, right? I'm gonna just sit here on the side of my keyboard and just bang out work all day. It doesn't work that way. You're not gonna have an engaged workforce. You're not gonna have a workforce that feels that they can trust you, that feels that they have psychological safety, that feels like that you actually care about them. And when you come with the space of like, hey, talk to me about your week. Tell me or, we even had something really cool that we did the other day. We had one of our monthly meetings in leadership, and we stopped. And for an hour, we just talked about like lessons we learned for the quarter. And like people will look like, oh, I have 50 meetings to go to, and it's just work, 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 work. But sometimes when you have to get a chance to sit down and really think about like, dang, what did I go through this quarter? How did I get through it? So just like I would say dismantling that, it's just work culture. Another piece I think is
that's crazy to me when
really
because again, I'm trying to I've had like my previous job before here. They did fun things from time to time, like happy hour here or Christmas party there. But basically, it was like get your work done. My current job was a lot more laid back until COVID, and then when COVID hit, we basically became work from home. So nobody sees each other anymore. But I know my wife's job does a lot of this stuff where they will like have like they'll talk about if something happens like I believe and she probably tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that there was like when there was a moment when the police beatings and stuff were happening, like they would have like meetings and talk about it.
Same.
And, like, talk about their feelings. And like for
That's
me,
what we do.
right.
That's
but
what we
for
do.
me, I haven't been a part of that. So like I'm just like, yeah,
it baffles you, right?
Yeah, because I'm like, dude, when I for me, it's always been like, go to work, get your job done, and go home. Like, you could be cool with people at your job, but those people are just people at your job. Like, you separate church and state. Listen, we cool. We could go a happy hour. We could, sit. We could talk. We can be pleasant to each other, but. But to hear you talk about how like, corporations and my wife to talk about how corporations are trying to, almost humanize
the employee experience. Right. Absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head.
I would be that dude that's like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I just want to go to work and to go home. So it would be a really hard thing for me personally to break down.
Yeah. Well, again, we're talking about dismantling the norm.
Right.
Right. Because I will be honest with you. So here's another courageous moment. When the George Floyd murder happened, I was the only Black person at Impact. And I was suffering that day. Suffering. My mom sent me the video at like 3:00 in the morning. And like, I was like watching it, like bawling, crying. My husband had to get up and go to work for 5:00 in the morning. I'm like, I didn't want him to leave. I'm like, can you please stay home? My kids had to go to school. And it was just like this big knot of fear sitting in my stomach.
Yeah.
Can you imagine just going to work and showing up and just working that day? It just wasn't in the cards for me.
Now, remind me, was that after quarantine or before?
That was during quarantine.
During quarantine. So
that was during quarantine.
Yeah, I didn't. I was working from home. So
right. Well, I've always pretty much been remote. Even though we have an office, I would, I live in Hartford. That's a little bit of a trip to New Haven. But another thing for me was like, I was going through that day and I was just miserable. And everybody was just going through there like, work as usual. And I remember at the end of the day, I was like, I'm going to send this video. I am just conflicted. I need to be in a space where I can get support.
Right.
Even if it was just a manager that said like, hey, let's have a conversation or take the rest of the day. I heard the news. I know that this is affecting you right now. When you're ready to talk, like I didn't have that space at that time. And the thing was, there were blinders on, excuse me.
Hey.
There were blinders on, unfortunately, for people who have never experienced that, right? It wasn't a part of their community. It wasn't an everyday conversation. So it was just like, okay, I heard this happen on the news, but we still have this to run. We still have this to do. And so I sent a very genuine and honest video to the entire company of being the only Black person, and not necessarily the lack of support, of just like, this is who I am, and this is how it's affecting me. This is how it's affecting my community. And, at the end of the day, like, it is what it is. And so I remember getting off, I sent it. I was like, whatever, set it and forget it. And I called my mom. I was like, I probably won't have a job by Monday.
Yeah.
Because I've experienced companies where I've been vocal about police brutality and what's going on in the thing. And they were just like, oh, we can't talk about that here. That's personal to you. I'm like, okay. And for most of my career, I've been the only Black person in the corporation, or one of a handful. I mean, when I mean a handful, 5 or less. And so, like, imagine traversing that space for so many years, knowing that this is happening in the community. And as you hear it in my voice, I'm very passionate about people. So this is something that's, near and dear to me. But when I tell you the conversation that it opened up, after that, I mean, the CEO reached out to me. Some of the owners reached out like, hey, how can we support? What should we be doing? If you had a magic wand, how would you, it was like immediate, like, we cannot have you feeling this way, Shandy. We didn't even know you felt this way.
Well, so that's two Americas right there. That's two Americas.
But again, it opened up the perspective to diverse listeners. In that moment, I was the diverse perspective. And it opened it up to more diverse listeners, so people could be like, so when the Buffalo shootings happened, I mean, Shandy, let's have a conversation, let's facilitate a conversation so everybody feels okay. When the mass shooting happened in Texas at the school and all those babies lost their lives, like, I mean, I just was like, parents, even if you're not a parent, if you just need a space, because I don't know how I'm able to move forward right now. So I know people need to take a step back, and we're able to facilitate and create a space for that.
Right. Yes.
And again,
it's really interesting because I remember my previous job when Trump won.
Ooh.
And
I cried.
I remember I was so angry that day at work. And I wasn't, there wasn't a ton of Black people at my job then. But I remember nobody talked to me. It was like, we're gonna leave him alone.
We're gonna leave Javon.
But I wasn't like stone-faced angry, even though I'm very good. I'm terrible at hiding what's on my face. I just was like, I just didn't want to talk. And I remember that I had 2 instances. That was one. And then at my my current job, I remember we were having we were just kind of sitting around pre-COVID. We were sitting around and talking, and I told them a story about how when I was in college, friends of mine, I was in Georgia, and we were driving my friend's car. He had a Mustang. It was a nice car. We were driving from Statesboro to Savannah. And we got pulled over. And, the cops took my friend out the car, had him at gunpoint, patted him down, yada, yada, yada. And I remember we were sitting in the car. We were all talking about our escape routes. Like, we were all like, if a gunshot goes off, you go that way, you go that way. Because there was only 2 cops.
It's the reality. Yes.
But I said this to my coworkers, and they were all like, really? Like, you were thinking that? Like, they pulled you over and that's what you think? And they're like, yeah, man. I was like, yeah. And it was like they just couldn't believe it.
Understand it. Yeah.
They couldn't understand why, like, it would be necessary to think that way. So, I know, especially like, because I said 2 Americas, there's a certain, like you said, you were the only Black person. I'm the only Black person. The Caucasian side of it, sometimes they just don't know. Like, we get frustrated, but sometimes they just don't know. They've never experienced it. They don't know many people who have, or even if they know somebody, that person's probably never talked to them about it.
Yep.
So, that to be able to have that communication in a corporate level so that they can understand and show empathy, that is an amazing thing. And I'm proud that you're able to be a part of of encouraging the voices of everybody around you to be able to do that.
Thank
Because
you.
honestly, I can see the necessity in that. Like the millennial thing, that's a philosophy thing. Honestly, I've just learned that I'm just gonna have to grin and bear it and wade my way into this new world that they're trying to do,
The Gen
that they're
Zers.
building. Yeah, I mean, like Gen Zers, they're the ones that are going to be inheriting this. Like they're going to take
Yeah.
over, and it's going to be their world. And you you either going to get on board or get left behind.
Yeah.
So I mean, I know it's hard to think about it, but it's probably the same thought process that our parents had.
Oh, I
Like,
agree.
you know
I
what I mean?
agree.
Like I could see my mom. I could see my mom now when I was sitting there listening to Notorious B.I.G. in my room, going, "This boy is going to be one of the people building this world." Like, oh,
Listen,
Lord
oh
bless.
my goodness. I
So
used to belt out no scrubs in the back of the church and get in trouble. Like, what's wrong with you? What is wrong with you?
I have so many questions. Why no scrubs? Why the back of the church? So many things we
Because
could get
we
into
stayed
there.
at church like it
Yeah,
was an
but I wasn't
extracurricular.
singing secular songs in the sanctuary. I wasn't doing
I'm sure
that.
somebody has.
Oh man,
Listen,
listen.
again.
But you know what though? It's funny. I was sitting and thinking how much church has kind of indoctrinated me to the
Mhm.
point where like I've caught myself doing this on more than one occasion. I will be rapping a song, and when the curse word comes along, I will literally censor myself.
I've done
It
that more than
doesn't
once.
happen as much lately, but
Mhm.
like it happens every now and again.
Oh
I just like
yeah.
Well, we come from an era that when we did get access to songs, because the radio versions or the
Mhm.
MTV version, we heard that so much more. Unless you had the album, you might
Exactly.
I know there are certain songs where I know the original explicit version, but at the same time, I find myself singing the cleaned up lyrics because that was
Yeah.
the one I was so exposed to. And it's like, oh wait, no, that's not really what the lyrics are at all. Uh,
Yeah.
so
No, trust me, I'm
I
there
can
with you.
imagine
But I'll tell you though, my mouth is
it.
reckless in this house. Pray
don't
for
do
me,
that.
Javon. Pray
Don't
for
do that.
me.
So let me ask you this.
Sure.
So you've been married for how long now?
4 years.
4 years. 4 years.
4 years. Been
Congratulations.
together 5. Thank you.
5 years.
Mhm.
How has your marriage helped influenced you in how to deal with when you're talking about communication? Is
Mhm.
there anything that you take from your job and that helps you in your marriage and vice versa?
Absolutely. Communication is at the foundation of a lot of what we do at Impact. Communication is our core. We realize that communication can make or break the organization. How we clarify something, how we're showing up with presence, how we're questioning things, how we vanguard, right? To make sure that the point lands in the right way and we're not offending anyone. And I have absolutely taken those same core fundamentals and have applied it in my marriage as well as in my parenting.
Okay.
I'll question my kids a lot more. Um, Again, like I said, I'm not perfect. The yelling fest definitely creeps in. I'm a mama of all boys. That's just testosterone all over the place.
I would be asleep
However,
right now at 9 o'clock. If I had 3 boys, I would be asleep. I would never. I would be
they're
asleep.
crazy.
Oh my
I
god!
love them though. I love
Now
them.
there, you said how old are they? How old are they? I'm gonna
So
digress for a second. How old are they?
yeah. So Aiden is now 15.
Oh Jesus!
Delano is going to be 11. Asher's going to be 6 next month. Yeah.
It's been 15 years.
Yep. Yep.
Jesus.
Yep.
I
Mhm.
remember you without the names.
I know, right?
I know.
It's been
Okay,
15
so
years.
give me something specifically, like something specifically from your job that you've taken and you've used with your husband and it's been successful. Like,
Question first. question first. So
The
not
fu-
assuming.
So you go kind of clarify that.
Sure. We use a principle within our communication called question first. So utilizing that principle, we just use a question to help somebody identify the right frame of thought. It's a little manipulative if used the wrong way, I should say. So just using questions to help somebody get to the next thought, and helping them pretty much solve on their own or create the solution on their own, helping guiding them through that. So a lot of times when I find myself, like, my husband is taking a little bit of time to catch up, of course, and we're going to talk about it. Even though I'm Jamaican, was raised here in the US. My husband was raised in the country, in the Isle of Jamaica, right? In the country. So that communication breakdown happens a lot in our household of, like, I didn't understand a certain thing he said, or I might have said something and the inflection sounded off. So what we do, and he's of recent picked it up, we just question each other to get to, like, oh, and so he'll question it like, oh, well, what do you mean by that? I'm like, well, hold on, did that offend you? And he was like, well, I had to make sure that you weren't saying it in that way. And then we have a great dialogue back and forth. So I would definitely say question first.
Question first. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'm trying to listen. I'm like, hey, how you question first? All right. Okay. All right. Now tell me something that you do you said the questioning, but tell me something else that you do with your kids. Something that's helped you with your kids.
Yeah. Obsess over learning is one of our core values at Impact, and I've instilled that in my own home. The love of learning. So I foster that with, if there's any obstacle that these kids are going through, whether it's in school, whether it's in emotional intelligence, say, for instance, they're not being effective in the home, I try to find a book that closely ties in with that issue. And we learn about it. We talk about it. We talk about ways that they can overcome. So a great one right now, Aiden is actually kind of going through that weird stage of, okay, he's a freshman in high school. He's trying to fit in. He's kind of been his own person most of his school career.
Mm-hmm.
He is the kid that loves anime. He loves Jinko jeans and a nice black goth t-shirt. That's his personality. Oh my goodness. But not only that, I know. I'm all, me, Javon. I am like a peacock in my wardrobe, and I'm like, come on, y'all are my children, please.
My stepdaughters be going out in 90-degree weather in all black hoodies and
hoodies,
everything. Like,
hoodies, the hoodie thing.
Like, dude, I like hoodies too.
I don't know what it means. I really don't get it.
I like hoodies too, but come on, like, it's 95 degrees out
in the summertime.
In the summer with no breeze.
Today
I'm
down
sorry.
here,
Go ahead.
that hit. Oh yeah.
Oh, I was like, I just don't get it. Go ahead. I'm sorry. That the black tea triggered me.
Well, so he's definitely, he's now been integrated, I should say, into the Hartford Public School system, which he's never been. He went to a charter school pretty much his whole school career.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he's in a Hartford Public School. And I mean, here comes the weird Ebonics accent. And I wouldn't even call Ebonics. Let me not even say that. Here comes the weird Brooklyn Bronx accent. I'm like, what is this? What is this from? Brooklyn. I mean, just completely changing his whole persona, talking in a different way. And so I actually ordered him the book. It's called The Rebellious Troublemaker. Mm-hmm. And I could be saying this wrong. Hold on, I'm going to tell you exactly. It's by the author. She's absolutely amazing. Lovey. I think I'm saying her name right. Yeah. Awesomely Lovey. She is this amazing author, activist, promoter of courageous voices. She wrote the book, The Professional Disruptor. And I love that book because it's all about being brave and standing in your courageous voice and how you can disrupt the status quo in a professional setting. And then so she has one for teens. And it's called, like, I think it is called The Rebellious Troublemaker.
Okay.
Uh,
Rebellious
and
troublemaker. Keep that
I
in
feel
mind.
like I'm messing this up.
That's okay. Well, that's what we got Google.
Right? I'm
So
like
we
on
got
her
Google.
LinkedIn right now. I'm like on this podcast, like, oh Lord,
No,
somebody
that's
is
okay.
gonna
We'll figure it out.
cancel
Rebellious teenager.
me.
All right, y'all can find it. Yeah, just type in rebellious teenager book, and I'm pretty sure
Right,
it's
right,
something
right.
close to
Something. Well, it's
something.
like something like, oh, here it is.
It,
It's not The Rebellious Teenager. It's called The Rising Troublemaker.
the rising trouble. See, but
The
it would. I
Rising
bet it would have felt. I
Troublemaker.
bet you would have. You would have gone down a rabbit hole, and it would have.
Right. It would
The
have broke
rising
me if
trouble.
I didn't get it. It's called The Rising
Okay.
Troublemaker. It's a fair fighter manual for teens. And she talks about like how she wrote this book. And she really needed this as a teenager. And she wished somebody would have told her like her too muchness is a superpower. The way that she was showing up as her authentic self was her greatest power. And not trying to fit in, would have helped to propel her further in life if she would have understood that from that age. So I have him reading that. We'll see, check in with me, in a week or two.
I'm gonna check in with you. I need to see if it works.
Here's the thing. I mean, I am not looking for them to have this transformation.
Right,
I think
right.
for me, it's all about helping them to always continue the conversation and fostering that love of knowing more than what, the world is just putting out there for you. So
Yeah, I mean, listen, that I can understand, especially the transition over into to high school, and I was front and center for a lot of that. I I always try to like think about my experience and what it was like for me in high school, and I think all of us had a certain level of trying to assimilate.
Yeah.
But it was I think it was a little different for me because I grew up and I've had this conversation here a couple times. I like comic books, wrestling, and and sci-fi and all that genre stuff, which wasn't super big back then.
Right.
So for me, I was always
the oddball
a
out.
little
Yep.
bit of an oddball,
Yeah.
and so, but it's interesting because it's turned so much.
Oh yeah.
That
That type of person is fostered now.
right, like
They're
the tribe.
They have a tribe. That's the best way.
There's the tribe. And I'm sitting here like, dude, I would have been king of the tribe back then.
Right?
Like I would have been
I
king.
literally run a tribe like that.
It's like there's no the people who would be considered different before that is the standard now.
Right.
Almost to a level. Like they're the person that did the different stuff, like they watched anime and they read comics, or even if they read books, like do people Jamari, I'm gonna talk to you. Do kids get bullied for reading books now? Like
yes.
I don't know. They do? Oh, okay.
Yes. So what the difference now is, like you said, they have a tribe. So
it's a larger tribe than
it is a larger tribe. And what's different is that while yes, there's bullying, yes, there's people who still don't know how to deal. In fact, I had a former student recently tell me that a person that was in one of their classes tried to connect with them on social media. And I was like, what was the problem? And they showed me the text messages, and then they said, well, I didn't tell you this last year, but one of the reasons why I would come to your class in second period was because this person was always telling me, they were always making fun of me for answering questions too fast in class, or because I was reading certain kinds of books, or the way that I dressed. And so that still happens. The difference now is that this person felt comfortable, one, coming to me, and two, knowing that because I run a certain club in the school, like your son probably would be in my anime club because that's what I run. And but the difference now is those kids are a little more varied because I've got kids who play sports. I've got kids who are in 2 or 3 different things. I've got beta club and kids up for top 10 in the class that are in the club as well. So it's a little
Oh,
more
wow.
diverse.
I love that.
Yeah, and so do I have the kids who absolutely wear their love of whatever it is genre thing on their sleeves? Yes, they do. But I've also got the kids that you wouldn't even know that they were into the things that they're into until they tell you.
Right.
So
And
I
again,
think
creating that safe space.
yes.
So I want to get into this because I don't want to hold you on here forever, but I do want to talk about it because you, ma'am, were quite the model at one point, or maybe now. So I've always, I always like talking to people who do, creative walks that are so far and different from me, the traditional artists, not far and different, but different. And modeling.
Not everyone gets to experience it.
Not modeling is a very specific type of art because there's a whole, like, I used to make fun of modeling back in the day, and then I remember I watched like one season of, what was it, America's Next Top Model, and I was like, man, this is hard.
It is
Why
very
is
hard.
this so hard?
It is very hard.
Tell us how you got into it. Like, are you still doing it? Like, just give us some backstory on it.
Sure. So, I still do projects. I actually just wrapped up one, a week ago. I think for me now, so of course it was a dream of mine. I mean, if you would have looked at my, if I was doing vision boards at like 19, if you looked at my vision board back then, you would have saw that like I had nothing but like, this is where I'm going to be. I'm going to be in America's Next Top Model. I was lucky enough. I actually made it to the final part to actually go in and do like the first episode of like when they did the first cut. Yeah. This was back in 2008. So it was the 2009, excuse me. So a year after Aiden was born. But I think for me,
were you on the TV? I'm sorry. Were you on like,
no. So I just sent in like my headshots. I sent in like I think I sent in like this janky video. And just submitted that, and they had reached out to me and was like, hey, you've made it to the final. We want you to come in and do like there was some paperwork I had to fill out. But again, I was a single mom. I had just gotten into modeling seriously, like right after I had Aiden. And I mean, and granted, when I was younger, like we were with like Barbizon and John Casablanca, and we had a couple agencies that we had worked with. Of course, they weren't promoting our look back in those days. You either had to be super skinny, super dark and lanky from South Sudan, or you had to be the next Tyra or the next Naomi, and it was hard for people to body that type of look. So yeah, Connecticut was my biggest launch. I got to work with some amazing just like designers, creatives, photographers, still do. When was it? I want to say 2021. I worked with a photographer, and actually my dream came true when I was on a cover of a magazine, which was pretty cool.
What
and again,
magazine?
That was hold on, now you're gonna make me have to go look. 1 second. I'll tell you exactly right now.
I mean, can I Google it? Hold on, let me see if I can. I'm trying to see if I can find the cover before she does. This is terrible.
All right, there we go. So it's Horizon magazine.
Horizon.
Horizon. So HORIZONT. This was volume 5, number 23, and this was, let me see what, I want to be honest about the year. 2021, yeah. This was in 2021. And awesomely enough, the photographer I worked with was my old boss at the Wealth Man. Well, so okay, not my direct boss, but he was our COO at the wealth management company that I was at, and he also decided to make a career change. And from working in wealth management and that sector, working in leadership, working in management, he decided, you know what, I want to learn how to become a photographer. And
he just
picked up the skill. Yeah.
Wow.
Just picked up the skill overnight and has been just like so successful in it ever since.
He's doing it full time?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's in like New York Fashion Week. He's in Boston Fashion. He's all over, which is awesome.
I wanted to do that. There was a very brief, it was like this big time where I was like, I could do photography. And I went to the store and it was a camera on sale. Like it came with like multiple lenses, a bag, everything. And it was only like $400 or something like that. Some crazy, it was like a Nikon, I think. And I stood there and I was doing the math in my head about buying this camera. Like, it's really inexpensive. I should do it. But I didn't do it. I kind of regret it, but there's so many photographers out there. I feel like it's almost like overload, especially in Connecticut.
You think it's like, oversaturated?
For me, like everybody's a photographer. I know 5
you
off
have
the
to
top
have a
of my
niche.
head.
Same. I mean,
Yeah,
I know a bunch. I know a bunch.
I know, but off the top of my head, I know at least 5 friends of mine who are photographers. And so it's like, for me, it's like, I feel like then I'm just stepping on people's toes. And I get it. You got to have a niche and I get it, but
Well, then here's the thing too. You can't limit yourself to only one location.
That's true. I might get into it eventually at some point, but I'll leave it to the guys. So like, did you do any like training for it? Like, I know there's a certain way you got to walk the catwalk. Did somebody just show you? Like, how did you get started? Like how did you get to the point where you are right now?
So I haven't done any runway work in years. I think the last runway I walked was in 2017. Oh. So it's been a while. I love print work. Print work is amazing. It tells a different story. Runway is awesome too. Just like I'm a busy mom now, so and I'm also getting up there in age, Javon. I'm knocking on 40's door.
Is it like Tyra like 50 something?
Right. And listen, I'm not, here's the thing, especially because I'm such an advocate of diversity, equity, inclusion, right? And belonging.
Right.
I know that I can still dominate in the space if I wanted to. I think for me, I just have fun with like the small projects where I get to have some creativity. I can just be myself. I can, just work in tandem with the photographer versus something where there's like, I have this vision and I want to throw a dead, squid on you. I'm not saying that's ever happened, but like some people will go the extra mile for a shot. Here's
this dead raccoon. Just put it right on your head.
I've literally worked with a photographer who, and I remember this is like way before digital magazines were a thing. He was starting a digital magazine, and I did the photo, and the photo shoot was outside in the middle. Like I was laying in a white dress in the middle of the snow. And I'm just like, I mean, not getting paid. That was another thing. It's a very, it's non-rewarding.
That doesn't sound rewarding.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah. So I just realized like, hey, I don't think I want to make this a, career anymore. I don't think this is something that I want to hold on to. And also the culture in modeling is toxic as well.
I believe it.
Yeah. The culture in modeling is very, very toxic. I mean, I can't speak for now, but back in the day, I mean, again, like I keep telling you, I'm a very small woman, very tiny. And I mean, going to go sees and casting calls, I'm like, oh, you have on too much weight. I'm looking at my body like, what? And it messes with your mind and your mentality of like, I'm not pretty enough.
That's
Or they would
insane.
look at my nose like, oh, her nose is broad. You know, there was a casting director, a casting person that literally told me like, you need to get a nose job. I'm like, what? So I just realized like, this culture doesn't support me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
That's oof. Oh man. So we don't want to hold you too long. At the end of every show, we do a segment where we ask for a top five. But I'm gonna do a little different this week.
Sure.
I'm inspired by a lot of what you're talking about. So we're gonna give this is gonna be your top five. We're not gonna give our top fives. This is gonna be yours because I'm really interested in what you have to say on this one.
Sure.
Top five changes you would make to the corporate setup.
Ooh, this is a good one. Top 5 changes.
If you could do
I would,
whatever change you want, whatever.
yeah, the values change. I would call it like how organization view people's value. They view it on like this metric of, and so they're not looking at the human side, right? They're just looking at like how much value are we getting out of this person? Pretty much like the value of like the sofa in your living room or the value of, you know, the refrigerator in your kitchen, how long it's going to run, how long is it going to work for you.
That is
So
scary.
change that mentality and have it be a more people focused mentality where like, how can I be, I would say a service mentality of how can I best serve my workforce in this position as a leader.
Okay, that's one.
That's one. The second thing that I would change, oh, there's so much to change. How we view change itself.
Okay.
I feel like corporations sometimes, and we talked about this, you know, they'll run to the next biggest thing thinking it's going to be the solution and not trusting their workforce
Mm-hmm.
to help weather them through the storm. So I think you know, that would be dismantling that thought process of like not like relying on your workforce. They're there to really, again, taking out the values thing of like, oh, just looking at them as another commodity,
Okay.
looking at them as your greatest asset.
All right. That's two.
That's 2. 3, of course, I got, you know, because who run the world, girls. I would definitely say I want to get rid of the word soft skills. I've been hearing that like crazy. And every time they talk about soft skills, you know, it's in tandem with like the more female roles within the organization. And granted, a lot of females are more implementers, integrators. Yes, you do have some at the top leaders that are COOs and CEOs and, you know, heading the company and all that other stuff. But then we do have the ones that are relegated to the admin position. When you see the people that are at the front desk, they're mainly women. People answering the phones at a corporation, they're mainly women. Getting the coffee, making sure that lunch is prepped, driving the culture within the organization. Most HR leaders are women. And so
Women.
we need to, and I get it. There's also skills, right? There's a nurturing skill that women just inherently are really good at. They're not, I don't think they're better than, but we're just really inherently good at. It's just one of the top skills that we are born
Okay.
with.
All right.
So I would break that down. That's 3.
Is that 3?
4,
Okay.
I would break down the divisiveness in the DEI space.
You gotta
I got to
clarify.
expand on that. Right.
Yeah.
So for me, as a person that's learning, that's navigating this space and how we are showing up for people, what I realize is that a lot of DEI leaders are very performative.
Okay.
They only put on just for like, we're doing this. And then, the culture itself sucks within the organization. As well as just like it's almost become, and again, it could be just like what my algorithm is filtering out, us versus them thing
Okay.
when we're trying. And I think, and again, my personal opinion, that the conversation should be more on how we are going to bring our message to more diverse listeners. How can we foster more diverse thought? And again, not shunning the education on the disparities or shunning the education on the things that are happening in other communities that are affected, right? But it shouldn't dominate the conversation where it's us versus them.
Okay.
And again, to me, this is laying the foundation for the Gen Zers, because to them, there is nobody more than them. Right? And we just got to get on board with that. And so the rhetoric that we consistently are putting out there is that it's like they don't learn, they're not listening to us, they're still treating us like crap, versus like, here are the solutions in place here are the solutions that I am suggesting that we can start bridging the gap between this division. We don't have that much in that space.
Okay.
So that would be number 4 for me.
All right, last one.
Number 5 is to continue. Okay, so I would say to continue to foster courageous voices that in turn are going to be so loud that they turn the tide of change.
Let's go.
And I mean, that's the one that I have to land on. I mean,
well, yeah,
I think that's the whole premise behind my work.
I was gonna say that's your job. Like, you want to keep your job. You want to keep that going. All right. Well, thank you, Shandia. We appreciate you being on.
Me.
Yes, this was fun. I learned a lot.
Thank you. Y'all made me ramble for far too long, but
no,
I'm so
that wasn't
grateful.
rambling. That's education, man. You gotta stop talking to listen sometimes. You know, I mean, our job is to facilitate a space for you to be able to educate and explain and tell your journey. I mean, this show is about you. It's not really about us. So, you know, we appreciate you being on. And if you have any events or something, or, you know, if you ever want to come back on and talk, you're more than welcome. And once again, thank you here at the Stoked Podcast. And we're going to wrap up today. But as I said earlier, you can find me at CT Collecticon at the Norwich Holiday Inn, March 25th, starting at, I think, 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. 9 a.m. for VIPs, but I will be there. Here's a schedule if you want to right click or whatever, or screenshot. But yes, feel free to come see me. And again, we're going to be announcing something next week for Jamari. I'm going to let Jamari get an opportunity to get his thing straight, and then we're going to announce it next week when we have our guest, Kevin Chapman, creator of the Afro Avenger. He has decided he's going to come in and challenge my title of the most opinionated man in comics. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be an entertaining episode, if not very off kilter. So anyway, thank you all for showing up. Thank you again, Shandia,
thank you for this space.
Yes, absolutely. And
thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate you both.
And we'll see you all next week for another episode of a Stoked Podcast, Creative Talk with Creative People. You guys have a great weekend. I hope to see some of you in Norwich. Have a good night, everybody.